Hi, we're here at Kennedy Space Center today. One of the key features of living on the Space Coast is the rich tradition that we have with space travel, and we're excited to show you about it, so come on in. Here today with Austin. Austin has worked with companies that support NASA. He's worked at the Vehicle Assembly Building, and he's a space freak, so we're excited that he's going to show us around.
Well, actually, one of the first questions I had for you is, do you like to race?
Oh, yeah.
It was called a space race, where the Russians, the Soviet Union, was trying to beat us to the moon. And they had the first man in space, they had Yuri Gagarin, they had the first spacewalk. They were doing everything before us. And there was one turning point where we actually did something before them. That's where we kind of pulled ahead, and that was docking two spacecrafts in orbit, getting up to speed, two separate launches. The one behind me is also an Atlas, but it has an Agena top. It's an unmanned probe. They launched them both, going 17,000 miles per hour, but they were so precise in their calculations that they could get them both going the same speed, or close enough to the same speed, where they wouldn't crash into each other. 1-2 meters per second come together, meet, and that's the first time we beat the Russians in space. Here in the rocket garden, the Saturn V, this is the biggest rocket in the rocket garden. You might be like, well, that must be what took us to the moon. And you'd be close. This rocket was actually used to test Apollo hardware in Earth orbit. But they couldn't get it all the way to the moon with this rocket. But they could get it into space to test it, make sure it worked. Then, what we're gonna see later, the Saturn V rocket, they take that same hardware, the service module and the lunar lander, they put it on the Saturn V. And that one could take them all the way to the moon, land, and return safely with just a little bit more power. It's hard to see how big this rocket is just from the back, so we're going to walk around and see just how huge it is. It's giant. Well, Barbara, this is the crown jewel here at the Kennedy Space Center, Shuttle Atlantis. They have a few of them around the country, Discovery's on display and Endeavor's on display. So many people worked on this, it took 12 years to develop this vehicle, and it brought so many jobs to this area. Now commercial space is opening up, more people are moving to the Space Coast, and the area is growing by leaps and bounds. There's people vying for contracts to get cargo into orbit, satellites in orbit. This is a good representation of what our area is all about, and how the space is going to continue to grow.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Very exciting.